Trump's shocking Ukraine U-turn. Welcome to Roh'sCorner, the podcast where we dive deep into the world's most pressing geopolitical stories with a fresh perspective. I'm your host, Roh, and today, we're unpacking a topic that's dominating headlines and reshaping alliances: President Donald Trump's evolving stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2025. From campaign promises to end the war in 24 hours to a complex diplomatic dance with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, Trump's approach has sparked hope, skepticism, and controversy. Buckle up for a comprehensive look at where the US stands, what's at stake, and what it means for the world. Let's set the stage. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, now in its fourth year since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022, has been a grinding war of attrition. Ukraine has lost 19% of its territory to Russian forces, with an estimated ascending to 400,000 Ukrainian and 790,000 Russian casualties. The human toll is staggering. Cities like Kiev and Kharkiv face relentless Russian missile and drone attacks, while Ukraine's bold incursion into Russia's Kursk region has shifted battlefield dynamics. Amid this chaos, the US, under President Trump's second term, has taken a stance that's raising eyebrows and questions about America's role in this global flashpoint. When Donald Trump campaigned for his second term, he made a bold promise to end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours, even before taking office. It was a headline-grabbing pledge, but as we sit here in July 2025, the war rages on. So, what's changed? Let's break it down. Trump's approach to the conflict has been anything but predictable. Early in his presidency, he signaled a shift from the Biden administration's staunch support for Ukraine, where Biden prioritized isolating Russia through sanctions and arming Ukraine with billions in aid. Trump's rhetoric leaned transactional, emphasizing peace through strength and a desire to reduce U.S. involvement. He described the war as a mess inherited from his predecessors, calling it a meat grinder akin to World War I trench warfare with the potential for catastrophic escalation. His skepticism of Ukraine's leadership, particularly President Volodymyr Zelensky, has been no secret, with Trump at times calling Zelensky a dictator and blaming Ukraine for prolonging the conflict by rejecting concessions like ceding Crimea to Russia. One of Trump's first moves was a 90-minute call with Vladimir Putin in early 2025, a diplomatic breakthrough that stunned Western allies. This call, described by Moscow as a step toward restarting peace talks, marked a stark departure from the US's previous strategy of isolating Russia. Trump followed up with a conversation with Zelensky, but the optics suggested he was prioritizing dialogue with Putin, a move that alarmed European leaders and some within his own Republican Party. Posts on social media from June 2025 capture the sentiment. One user noted Trump praising Putin's kindness the day after a deadly Russian attack on Dnipro, highlighting the tension in his approach. By March, the US took a controversial step, joining Russia, Belarus, and North Korea in voting against a UN resolution condemning Russia's invasion, a first since 2022. This vote, coupled with a US-drafted Security Council resolution calling for a swift end to the conflict without criticizing Russia, signaled a pivot toward neutrality. European allies, who amended the US draft to affirm Ukraine's sovereignty, were left reeling, with some calling it a betrayal of the transatlantic alliance. Trump's team, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, has pushed for negotiations, with talks in Riyadh in March 2025 yielding agreements on Black Sea navigation and prisoner exchanges. But the progress has been halting. A face-to-face meeting between Russian and Ukrainian officials in Istanbul on May 16, facilitated by Turkey, resulted in over 1,000 prisoners swapped per side, a rare tangible outcome. Yet, Putin's insistence on maximalist demands, like barring Ukraine from NATO and halting Western aid, has kept a comprehensive ceasefire out of reach. Trump's public statements have oscillated wildly. In April, He claimed Ukraine and Russia were very close to a deal after his envoy Steve Witkoff met Putin in Moscow. But just a day later, after meeting Zelensky at the Vatican during Pope Francis' funeral, he expressed doubts about Putin's willingness to negotiate, citing Russia's relentless attacks on Kiev. There was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas, Trump posted on social media, urging Putin to stop, and lamenting the 5,000 weekly soldier deaths. He's even floated secondary sanctions on Russia, though he's yet to follow through, notably sparing Russia from his global tariff plans. The U.S. military stance has been equally inconsistent. Trump briefly paused weapons and intelligence sharing with Ukraine in February after a heated Oval Office clash with Zelensky, where he and Vice President J.D. Vance berated the Ukrainian leader. While defensive aid, like Patriot systems, has since resumed, some shipments remain on hold to prioritize U.S. stockpiles. This pause has deepened Ukrainian concerns, especially as Russia's air assaults intensify, with over 500 missiles and drones launched in late June. Ukrainian forces, stretched thin, rely heavily on Western aid, but Trump has suggested Europe should shoulder more of the burden, noting the ocean separating the U.S. from the conflict. Public opinion in the U.S. reflects this complex dynamic. A March 2025 Economist YouGov poll showed 60% of Americans sympathize with Ukraine, but Republican support has waned, influenced by Trump's rhetoric. A Chicago Council poll noted a dip in overall support for aid, with Republicans increasingly skeptical. Yet, some GOP figures, like Senator Chuck Grassley, have urged Trump to impose tougher sanctions on Putin, calling Russia's actions a play to make America a patsy. What's driving Trump's approach? Analysts point to his transactional worldview, where deals trump ideology. His admiration for Putin's strength and frustration with Zelensky's resistance to concessions, like ceding Crimea or foregoing NATO membership, shape his strategy. A plan floated by Trump advisors Keith Kellogg and Fred Flates proposed a ceasefire based on current front lines, effectively freezing the conflict with Russia holding 20% of Ukraine. Zelensky rejected this outright, insisting on full territorial integrity and NATO membership as non-negotiable. The geopolitical fallout is profound. Europe, alarmed by Trump's Russia-friendly overtures, is pushing for rearmament and stronger independent defenses. NATO, led by Mark Rutte, views Russia as an existential threat, and Trump's refusal to commit to Ukraine's NATO aspirations has strained transatlantic unity. A Reuters report from March 2025 highlighted European summits calling for urgent military buildup, with some leaders fearing a fissure in NATO. On the ground, the war's toll is devastating. Ukraine's power grid is down 80%, facing a brutal winter. Civilian deaths surged 37% from December 2024 to May 2025, with 968 killed and 4,807 injured. Russia's economy, strained by 6.3% GDP military spending, faces recession risks, but its territorial gains, 232 square miles from May to June, show no signs of slowing. Ukraine's Kursk operation, holding 90 square kilometers in Russia, had humiliated Putin, but Russia has recovered the gains made by Ukraine. Trump's rhetoric has shifted from campaign bravado to cautious realism. In July 2025, aboard Air Force One, he admitted uncertainty about ending the war, a far cry from his 24-hour promise. "I don't know if that's going to happen," he told reporters, though he insisted it remains a priority. His team, including Rubio, emphasizes hard diplomacy, but Zelensky's insistence on no frozen conflict and Putin's territorial ambitions keep the impasse intact. What's next? Trump's push for peace could either force a fragile ceasefire or tilt the balance toward Russia, risking Ukraine's sovereignty. His reluctance to impose new sanctions, coupled with cozy rhetoric toward Putin, has sparked fears of a broader US-Russia reset. Yet, His occasional rebukes of Putin and resumed aid suggest he's hedging his bets, wary of looking weak to his base or alienating allies. As we wrap up, the Russia-Ukraine conflict remains a test of Trump's deal-making prowess. Will he broker a historic peace or deepen global divisions with his renewed arming of Ukraine? The world is watching, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Thanks for joining me on Roh's Corner. If you found this dive into Trump's Ukraine policy gripping, like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay curious and keep your eyes on the world.